everybody, it's qualifying day here in Atlanta, and we're on our way shortly for qualifier number 1. Thought I'd answer a question or two before we get rolling, but anywho, we've made it to crew life number 20, so thanks everybody for watching, tuning in, liking, subscribing. Really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun, got a lot more questions to answer. So I believe it was Jay Walker asked why don't a lot more teams do throttle wax anymore, and he asked, does it have something to do with clutch? And it absolutely does. They used to do the throttle whack because they thought it seated the clutch, and they probably did at the time, but the way we set the gaps and everything on the clutch, we don't want to do a throttle whack and change that adjustment at all, and that's why they're not done very often anymore. But they are fun when we do them. David Reed asked, what's the air-fuel ratio on, and then we run 90% nitro, what's the other 10%? The other 10% is alcohol, methanol, and that's what we cut it with. And the AFR, I don't know exactly what that is. It's a lot different with nitro, means it brings so much oxygen to the party on its own. So I don't know exactly if we even go by. We look at EGT temperatures. We don't look at an O2 sensor or look at an AFR, so to speak. It's a little bit different than when you're tuning a gas motor or an alcohol motor. And the other thing David Reed asked about spark plug gap, because we put cylinders out, if we gap them differently. No, both spark plugs are gapped the same. There's a lot of dwell to create a big flame front, but we run a lot of nitro, and it's really hard to keep lit. And sometimes if you bring a little too much fuel in before there's enough load on the motor, it'll put a hole out, and it happens to everybody out here, and it's one of the hardest things for the crew chief to keep on top of is not putting a hole out, but yet getting it enough so it's not too lean. It's a balancing act. We had a visitor today. The governor of Georgia stopped by. All right, y'all. Another question I got was, what are these little wires on the rear wing for? And if you follow them down, come down, they go through the crossover, and they got a little loop that goes into the chute cables. So it's a safety device that if we lose the wing for whatever reason, it'll pull the chutes automatically and hopefully save the car. Hey everybody, it's kind of a recap of Atlanta, and we're going to answer some questions that I've gotten over the last couple weeks, more than what I got to answer at the track anyways. Obviously quite a bit disappointed that we weren't even able to stage in the first round at Atlanta. I know I'm going to get a ton of questions on what happened. Clay already posted that he felt it was his fault. I don't believe it was. It was just a bad situation. Leah kind of double stepped at the light and ended up pushing out a head gasket and kind of blowing up, and they were cleaning the top end of the track, and that took some extra time, and we didn't pay close enough attention to the water box as it started to dry out. And the way that Clay does the burnout, we kind of need to make sure that we have a good and wet area. So basically when he went up to do a burnout, car didn't spin the tire over, it drove right through the burnout box, and which heated the clutch up, and when it heated and expanded the clutch, couldn't get it to go into reverse, and that's the end of our day. And Clay was astute enough to know he couldn't get it in reverse. He tried for a little bit, hurried up, unbuckled, jumped out of the car, and got over the wall so that Josh Hart could make his pass and it be legit and us not hang him up, because they won't let that other car go until Clay's out of the car and in a safe position, being out in front like that. So you know, you go from hero to zero pretty quick in the sport. We made it to the final at the last race. In this race, we couldn't even stage the first round. A little embarrassing for us, but I guarantee it ain't going to happen again. But that's kind of what happened to us, and that's racing. It's fickle, and it's amazing how tough and strong these cars are, and what little bit of a difference can make in it not work at all. But it was still fun out there. We had a new sponsor out there. We had the governor in our pit. Hopefully things are looking up for sponsorship and everything else. It was really cool to have Walmart there. It's kind of sad to see that's the last race at Atlanta, but you know, there's a lot of tracks around, and it shouldn't be the end. I've heard some rumors of somebody building a track somewhere in the vicinity, so who knows what's going to happen in the future. But anyways, some questions. One of the questions that I got several, I'm not going to name who asked it, there were several people that have asked about it, is why do we have a whole new crew? That really comes down to COVID. Last year was really rough. You know, we only got to make 11 races. It was rough on sponsorship dollars and all of those things. And so a lot of us, you know, guys had to, you know, they got laid off. Most teams laid most of their personnel off, not all teams. And it's just life. And guys had to go out, and, you know, we still have bills, we still have houses, we still have responsibilities. So a lot of guys had to get other jobs. Some are still racing, some are in the private sector doing other stuff, but it wasn't a management decision to get rid of people. It wasn't like that. It was just circumstance, and then circumstance that got even worse for some teams than ours is like Terry McMillan. He's not out there this year, which is really bad for him, but we picked up Chris and Kalen from his team, and they're great. And they got a lot of experience. They're fun to work with. They're about racing. It's a good time. So we're starting to gel as a team again. It takes a couple races to get everybody in sync and on the same page to communicate without communicating, so to speak. We're getting there quickly, a lot quicker than I thought we would with this many new people. But you know, it's coming along. But that's really it. As much as we all love racing and stuff, we still have lives and responsibilities. SJ Air asked, how did the engine pitch the rods in Vegas, and is it true that the engine will dynamically disassemble itself at part throttle? Dynamically disassembling itself, no, that's not really true. I mean, we do the burnout at part throttle and it doesn't hurt anything. In fact, we only give them a little bit of throttle. It doesn't like to be at part throttle. These things don't like to be pedaled. If you watch them get pedaled, they usually put a hole out because the fuel needs a load to burn, and it's a slow burning fuel, and so when you take a load away and put it back, a lot of times it'll put a hole out. But as far as dynamically disassembling itself, no. It pitched the rods out in Vegas when he lifted, and that's because when we lift or decel or on overlap, there is force on the rod. The rod's moving at around 90 miles an hour at about 80 degrees before top dead center, or 20 degrees before it's to top dead center, and then it puts the brakes on and goes the other way in about an inch. So think about going 90 miles an hour and then stopping something in an inch. And some of these stats and information I got from Bill Miller, who's, you know, we get rods from them, and he gives us some lessons on what we need to be looking for and what forces are and stuff like that. It's interesting man to talk to. Anyways, that rod is traveling at a high rate of speed, and we put the brakes on, so it tries to pull the cap off, and that's what happens. Sometimes when they decelerate at the end of the run, and the rods have had enough runs on them, it just let go, and then that'll generally make the other one let go because it's starting to smack around in there. So that's what happened in Vegas. Not the tune. The car was pretty happy, running pretty well. A couple back-to-back 75s, which was nice. But that's what happened in Vegas. VW1 asked about wheel speed versus traction, spinning the tire versus dead hooking kind of thing. So does it create more traction? It does. You need wheel speed for a few reasons. It puts the engine in the RPM that we want it. It also helps keep the tire rounder. If you don't have enough wheel speed, you drive into tire shake a lot. That's part of it, is because you don't have enough wheel speed to help keep the tire round, so then it starts squaring off and that creates it. But the other thing about creating more traction is as the tire is spinning and shearing material off against the racetrack, that actually creates more traction than dead hooking. So as you're shearing it off, and that action creates even more traction than you would if it's not spinning at all. So there's other principles in there, but that's kind of the gist of it. So you need to have wheel speed. You need to be spinning a little bit all the way. Steve Lennox asked, are any of the parts cryogenically treated for hardness? Not that I'm aware of. I don't believe we have anything that's cryo-treated. It just doesn't, everything's kind of got such a cycle life, and we can build stuff such heavy duty that it's not something that really happens for us very often. Robert Caruso, if I'm saying that correctly, asked if I wear any heat sleeves on my arms or just gloves, or does anybody else on the team? The clutch assistant and sometimes the clutch person, depending on who's pulling the pack out and stuff like that, they'll wear heat protection sleeves because of the the clutch and stuff is so hot. I don't wear anything underneath the car other than a long sleeve t-shirt. I put a long sleeve t-shirt on. That generally was the hot 70 dripping through there. It usually cools it down enough that I don't get burned, and it's quick. And then just jersey gloves, the cheap brown or gray jersey gloves work really well. Greg Brown asked, do we use the same oil after the warm-up, or do we change it? What kind of happens with the oil? We change the oil after the warm-up. It's diluted enough, and we have a great sponsor in Valvoline that sets us up with their oil, so we can kind of afford to not have to run what we run in the warm-up to help protect the engine the best we can. So we warm the car up with over 3 gallons of oil, and when we make a pass, it's just over 4 gallons of oil that's in the motor when we go up there to make a pass. Oh, and Tosh asked if using a conventional oil pan, how do we keep the oil pump from starving? Well, we use a kind of a conventional oil pan. We don't use a dry sump system, but it holds a lot of oil, and our pickup for the driven pump is at the very back of the pan. So talking about it stacking against or no baffling or whatnot, there's baffles in there to keep from sloshing on the crank, but it just goes to the back, and it's at the very back, and that allows it to push to feed. And once that pump has got suction, it ain't gonna undo by G-force. It's pushing a lot of oil in a short amount of time. That's kind of it for the Q&A tonight, and keep them coming. Keep sending me questions, and I'll answer them the best that I can. There's always, there's some stuff that I can't answer. The next time that I am with the car, when we are in Charlotte, I'll do kind of what we're doing with the car after the burnout and stuff on the knobs and throttle stops and stuff like that up at the hat and the injector. So I've been meaning to answer that, and I was going to here in Atlanta. I just didn't get time, and it was a little bit of a rough weekend for us, but we'll be back, and we're going to hit her hard in Charlotte. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you like what we're doing. I can always use more likes and more subscribers, but appreciate it out there. Y'all stay safe, and we'll see you on the next one.